one to another, and the other 5 curtains shall be coupled one to another. And thou shalt make loops of blue upon the edge of one curtain from the selvage in the coupling, and likewise thou shalt make in the uttermost edge of another curtain in the coupling of the second. 50 loops shalt thou make in the one curtain, and 50 loops shalt thou make in the edge of the curtain that is in the coupling of the second, that the loops may take hold one of another. And thou shalt make 50 taches or clasps of gold and a couple of the curtains together with the taches. And it shall be one tabernacle. Okay, if you're underlining anything in your Bible, this is it. This is one. All of this is for one thing here. Okay. Verse 7, and thou shalt make curtains of goat's hair to be covering upon the tabernacle. 11 curtains shalt thou make. The length of one curtain shall be 30 cubits, the breadth of the one curtain 4 cubits, and the 11 curtains shall be of all one measure. And thou shalt couple 5 curtains by themselves, and 6 curtains by themselves, and shalt double the 6th curtain in the forefront of the tabernacle. And thou shalt make 50 loops of the edge of the one curtain that is outmost in the coupling, and 50 loops in the edge of the curtain which coupleth the second. And thou shalt make 50 taches, clasps of brass, and put the taches into the loops, and couple the tent together, that it may be one. There's the 2 big pictures here. It's going to be one thing here. All these many pieces. One thing. In the remnant that remaineth of the curtains of the tent, the half curtain that remaineth shall hang over the backside of the tabernacle, and a cubit on the one side, and a cubit on the other side of that which remaineth in the length of the curtains of the tent. It shall hang over the sides of the tabernacle on this side and on that side to cover it. So here we have the curtains. Verses 1 to 6 were the fine linen curtains. Verses 7 to 13 spoke about that's the beginning of the goat hair curtains. So as we read through this whole chapter, we'll see that 10 curtains, 50 loops, 50 clasps, 40 sockets, 20 boards, 2 veils. Yet according to the 2 verses that I emphasized, the end of verse 6 and the end of verse 11, this is one thing. Okay? I don't know if this was drilled into you about 20 years ago when I graduated from college, and I was a psychiatric technician. I was a community liaison. Unity and diversity. Anybody ever get diversity training here? Right? Okay. Here's a unity. This is one thing. This is the tabernacle. But you see all these parts? Okay. There's a unity, but there's also a diversity here. There's a diversity, but there's also a unity here. So this one thing is going to be the tabernacle, and all these pieces are going to make it up. Okay, remember again, the tabernacle is the place where they'll worship. This is the tent of meeting, right? The place where God will meet them. Now let's look at verse 14 as we see another type of covering. And thou shalt make a covering for the tent of ram skins dyed red, and a covering above the badger skin. So there's different coverings again. Okay, there's fine linen coverings, there's goat hair coverings, there is badger and ram coverings. Let's read verses 15 to 29. And again, let me ask you, men, does reading this seem like how to put together this device, this toy that kids would get during Christmas? You really don't want to read it, right? You just, boom, I admit that. Okay, this seems laborious a little bit, all these technical, yes?
It's like IKEA furniture.
Yeah, IKEA furniture, exactly right. All this little stuff, and you're thinking, the screw goes there, and that's all you need. You put the big pieces together. But this is it, right? This is an engineer. These are the specifics. And it has to be done like this. Okay? You can't improve. Don't try to upgrade. Don't try to update. Okay? Make sure you don't have any extra pieces at the end. Okay? This is what you got to do. All right? Now let's look at verses 15 to 29 here. And thou shalt make boards for the tabernacles of shittim wood, standing up. 10 cubits shall be the length of a board, and a cubit and a half shall be the breadth of one board. So if you can imagine, 15 feet high, 2 1/4 feet wide, these boards. So remember, all this material is built for beauty as well as for strength, because this is the place where they would worship God. So this is a serious matter on how they build this tent of meeting, this place that would represent the very presence of God. Verse 17, 2 tenons shall there be in one board, set in order one against another. Thou shalt make for all the boards of the tabernacle. And thou shalt make the boards of the tabernacle 20 boards on the south side toward southward. And thou shalt make 40 sockets of silver under the 20 boards, 2 sockets under one board for his 2 tenons, and 2 sockets under another board for his 2 tenons. And for the second side of the tabernacle on the north side there shall be 20 boards. And there are 40 sockets of silver, 2 sockets under one board, 2 sockets under another board. And for the sides of the tabernacle westward thou shalt make 6 boards. And 2 boards shalt thou make for the corners of the tabernacle in the 2 sides. And they shall be coupled together beneath, and they shall be coupled together above, and the head of it unto one ring. Thus shall it be for them both. They shall be for the 2 corners. And they shall be 8 boards, and their sockets of silver 16 sockets, 2 sockets under one board, 2 sockets under another board. And thou shalt make bars of shittim wood, 5 of the boards of the one side of the tabernacle, and 5 bars for the boards of the other side of the tabernacle, and 5 bars for the boards of the side of the tabernacle, for the 2 sides westward. And the middle bar in the midst of the boards shall reach from end to end, and thou shalt overlay the boards with gold, and make their rings of gold for places for the bars, and thou shalt overlay the bars with gold. So here, you're making a tent. Okay, this is going to be a mobile tent. So you're going to have to make the rings, make everything. You're going to have to break camp, break down the tent when we move. When the pillar of fire moves, you're going to move. So this is how important it is for you to get the instructions exactly right, the pattern that God gives. So we see, as we just read there, boards and sockets, 48 boards, 15 feet high, 2¼ feet wide. This is going to be a big tabernacle. Okay, if you don't know, if you can't get a picture of this, at the Leslie Hale Center in Tarpon Springs, there's a mock or imitation tabernacle, exactly like this. They have some of the details wrong on the Ark of the Covenant, where the ring should be, and how the cherubim should be, I think. But it's big. It's as big as this chapel. Okay? So imagine having to break camp with this tent, right? But you have a lot of people to do it. Okay, so the last 9 verses, and we'll draw the big picture application here. All right? And thou, verse 30, and thou shalt rear up the tabernacle according to the fashion. Again, underline that phrase if you do, because this is what you're supposed to do. You can't deviate, you can't upgrade or try to update. You do it according to this pattern, according to this instruction. Okay? And thou shalt rear up the tabernacle according to the fashion thereof, which was showed thee in the mount. What I showed Moses, that's the way you're going to do it. And thou shalt make a veil of blue and purple and scarlet and fine twined linen of cunning work, with cherubim shall it be made. And thou shalt hang it upon the pillars of shittim wood overlaid with gold. Their hooks shall be of gold upon the 4 sockets of silver. And thou shalt hang up the veil under the taches, that thou mayest bring in thither within the veil the ark of the testimony. And the veil shall divide unto you between the holy place and the most holy. And thou shalt put the mercy seat upon the ark of the testimony in the most holy place. And thou shalt set the table without the veil, and the candlestick over against it, the table of the side of the tabernacle toward the south. And thou shalt put the table on the north side. And thou shalt make an hanging for the door of the tent of blue and purple and scarlet and fine twined linen wrought with needlework. And thou shalt make for the hanging 5 pillars of shittim wood, and overlay them with gold, and their hooks shall be of gold, and thou shalt cast 5 sockets of brass for them. Whew, that is a materials list. Okay, this is the material that we're going to put together the tabernacle with, and twice, the emphasis is this is one thing. This is not just many pieces. This is one thing. Okay, and you're going to do this one thing according to the instructions that I gave you, according to this pattern. Don't deviate. So here's the big picture application as we go into prayer here. 1, there's only one plan for the tabernacle. It came from God. Okay, men can do a lot of good things, right? Men are created after the image of God. In fact, if you were to look at Luke 16:8, Jesus says this, and it's kind of shocking. Listen what he says about the wisdom of the children of this world. In Luke 16:8, he says, "And the Lord commended the unjust steward because he had done wisely. For the children of this world are in their generation wiser than the children of light." Okay? Human wisdom wiser than God's children in the exercising of forethought and the desire for gain. Okay, when we get to Luke 16 on Sunday mornings, probably 2 or 3 months away, but that whole passage about the unjust steward, many of you will probably feel unsettled. Okay, but let's look at the New Testament picture of building of God's temple. Okay, we're going to draw parallels from old and new. Turn to 1 Corinthians 16 here. So even though men of this world in their generation, in this time, can be wiser than the children of light, okay, not for eternity, just for time on earth. Sometimes the children of this world are smarter than children of light. But if we as children of light do or try to build God's temple, build God's church, according to the wisdom of men, that work will be destroyed. Look at 1 Corinthians chapter 3. Everybody there? 1 Corinthians chapter 3, beginning in verse 16. Know ye not that ye are the temple of God? By the way, the King James is helpful here. When the word ye is used, it is you, the plural, you all, instead of you, individual. Okay? So know you all not that you all are the temple of God. So the application is for the church, not just an individual. Know ye not that ye are the temple of God, that the Spirit of God dwelleth in you? If any man defile the temple of God, him shall God destroy. For the temple of God is holy, which temple you all are. Let no man deceive himself. If any man among you seemeth to be wise in this world, let him become a fool, that he may be wise. For the wisdom of this world is foolishness with God. For it is written, He taketh the wise in their own craftiness, and again, the Lord knoweth the thoughts of the wise, that they are vain. Therefore let no man glory in men, for all things are yours. Whether Paul or Apollos or Cephas or the world or life or death or things present or things to come, all are yours. And ye are Christ's, and Christ is God's. The parallel here, I think what we're learning is, look, you do according to God's will, His fashion, His pattern. Don't try to deviate on it. Don't try to improve it. Okay? Me as a pastor, I want to build things. Right? I just want to build. Let's build. However, okay, if you go to the irreducible minimum of what is needed to build God's church, it's people, it's time, it's love and teaching. Okay? We don't need coffee shops. We don't need soccer fields. We don't need even family centers. Okay? But are those things useful? As long as they help time, let's spend some time with each other in the family center, right? And teaching. And the ability to fellowship. So none of those things are wrong. But, people, you have that worldly mindset. If you build it, they will come. And that's not God's wisdom. God's wisdom is you disciple one-on-one, or 1-on-2, 1-on-3, 1-on-12, 1-on-70, one to however big the church is. Okay? So don't use the wisdom of this world to do God's work. Do God's work, right? In His way. And He'll bless. So whenever God does a work, He has a plan for that work. Okay, whether it be the tabernacle, we just read about that, or the temple. Okay, He'll give a pattern to David and then to Solomon. The local church. You're in the New Testament. Turn to Philippians 2. Philippians chapter 2. Philippians chapter 2 here. With the idea of this, that whenever God does a work, He has a plan. He has a method. He has a fashion according to the pattern that God says. Philippians 2, verse 12 and 13. Wherefore, my beloved, as ye have always obeyed, not as in my presence only, but now much more in my absence, work out your own salvation with fear and trembling, for it is God which works in you both to will and to do of His good pleasure. So God has a plan. He works in us individually. Okay? He works in a leader, a pastor, but He also works in individual members of the church as well. Okay, somebody comes up with a great idea. I'm like, great, are you gifted for that? Yes, well then you're in charge of that one then, right? Because you're gifted and you have the burden for it. Okay, and so God works in individual people, and pastors for the big picture, I think, the big picture, the direction, but individual people for different individual ministries. Okay, whether it be a bus ministry or a discipling ministry or a greeter ministry, God works in individuals and how they're gifted, and that's how He builds the person as well as the church through that. Look at Ephesians 2. Ephesians chapter 2, verse 10. Again, the big idea is, look, God has a pattern. God has a prescribed way of building His tabernacle, His church. Ephesians 2:10. For we are His work in progress, right? We are His workmanship, created in Christ Jesus unto good works, which God hath prearranged. He's before ordained that we should walk in them. So He has, Ephesians 2:10, He has prepared a work for each of us individually, according to us, our giftedness, our ability. And by the way, if you study the gifts, Romans, Corinthians, and some other places in the New Testament, you'll find out that the gifts are also commands for everybody. Okay, some have the gift of giving, but all are commanded to give. Some have the gift of service with their hands, but all are commanded to serve. Okay, but some are specifically gifted for that. Okay, so God prearranges, determines in advance what the individuals of a church will do. Okay, and in that way, He builds the church. God builds it, right? So, God warned Moses twice. Okay, turn to Hebrews now, but Hebrews chapter 8. God warned Moses twice to make everything in the tabernacle according to the pattern that God revealed to him on the mountain, on the mountaintop there. I'll read Exodus 25:40, but turn to Hebrews 8 if you would. Exodus 25:40. It says, And look that thou make them after their pattern which was showed to thee in the mount. Do it according to the way I've prescribed you. Okay? This is how you're going to build it. Now look at Hebrews 8, verses 1 to 5, and you'll see the parallel now from Old and New Testament, from the tabernacle to the church in the work of Christ. Now the things which we have spoken, this is the sum. We have such an high priest who is set on the right hand of the throne on majesty in the heavens, a minister of the sanctuary and of the true tabernacle which the Lord pitched and not man. For every high priest is ordained to offer gifts and sacrifices, wherefore it is of necessity that this man have somewhat also gifts according to the law, who serve unto the example and the shadow of heavenly things, as Moses was admonished of God when he was about to make the tabernacle. For see, saith he, that thou make all things according to the pattern showed to thee in the mount. So you're going to do this according to the pattern that I've given you. Okay, that is the big idea here. Do things according to God's will. We see here that the earthly tabernacle, okay, Moses' tabernacle, is a copy of the heavenly tabernacle. So you ever heard, if you've ever heard philosophers and some physicists who say that we live in a digital world, we're actually the digital world. The spiritual world is the true, the reality. Okay, so the earthly tabernacle is a mirror or a picture of the heavenly tabernacle, the heavenly place of worship. Okay, so that's why you're to get this right. Don't mess it up. Don't do what you want to do. Do exactly as I've told you to do on how to build this tabernacle. Okay, and if you read Revelation, you'll see that this is true. Revelation 6, verse 9, it talks about the brazen altar. Chapter 8, verse 3 talks about the altar of incense. Chapter 4, verse 2 of Revelation speaks about the throne, the lamps, the sea, the cherubim. All of these earthly furnishings, okay, on the earthly tabernacle are pictures of the true tabernacle, which is in heaven. So the basic principle of ministry here, as we draw this out, is that we are to follow the pattern given from heaven, not the pattern given from this world. Okay? Do not form yourselves according to the pattern of this world. Romans 12, right? Be not conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. So be sure your plans then are from heaven and not of this world. Okay? That's the big idea. Now, let me read verse 2 back of Exodus 26. Here's the second big idea. The length of one curtain shall be every 20 cubits, and the breadth of one curtain 4 cubits, and every one of the curtains shall have one measure. Okay? God is using a certain measurement. Okay? Here's a big picture application. We are to measure things in the success according to God's standards, not men's standards. Okay, I've said before, sometimes when I get my focus wrong, my mood will be according to the attendance, up or down, up or down, up or down. I have to train myself not to be that way. Okay, our standard is, are we making disciples? Okay, God, that's what God said. He didn't say, you shall average 135 every Sunday for a year. Right? So I have to remind myself, is the work of ministry getting done? Yes. Okay? So it's God's standards, not men's standards, that we are to compare. Another big idea, only use the materials that God told them to use. Turn to 1 Corinthians 3. I think this is the last passage for the application. We'll be done in just a few minutes here. I think everybody's familiar with this passage. Okay, we just read in Exodus 26 the materials list, what was going to be used, right? Here, Paul will speak about the materials list. This passage that I'm about to read can be applied to individual Christians, but it's really towards teachers in the church, okay, whether it be a pastor or another type of a teacher. 1 Corinthians 3, verse 10. According to the grace of God, which is given unto me as a wise master builder, I have laid the foundation, and another buildeth thereon. But let every man take heed how he buildeth thereon. So here Paul has that right measuring stick. He goes, according to the grace of God. Paul built the church, and he gives the credit to God. God worked in Paul. The church was built. But he says, according to the grace of God which was given to me. Okay? I don't build the church. You don't build the church. God, through his grace, working in us to will and to do of his good pleasure, builds the church. That's the picture here. And again, at the end of that verse there, end of verse 10, let every man take heed how he buildeth thereupon. It's a serious thing to teach the scripture in the church. This is what he just said. If you're going to be a teacher in the church, take it very seriously. Okay? Take heed how he builds upon this. Verse 11. For other foundation can no man lay than that is laid, which is Jesus Christ. So here's a good way to argue against anybody who says there's extra revelation. Okay? God has laid one foundation, Jesus Christ. If you're to read Acts, I forget what passage it is, but or Paul says, the church is built upon the apostles and the prophets, the foundation of the apostles and the prophets. In other words, the word that came through them, the apostles and the prophets, that's what the church is to be built upon. Okay, so the Book of Mormon, any other book, any religious book, is building on a different foundation. One foundation has already been laid, Jesus Christ and the apostles' doctrine. Okay? So the Apostle Paul laid the foundation of the church at Corinth there, and that was the foundation was Jesus Christ, his person and his work. All right, let's read verses 12 to 16. Now if any man build upon this foundation gold, silver, precious stones, wood, hay, stubble, every man's work shall be made manifest, for the day shall declare it, because it shall be revealed by fire. And the fire shall try every man's work of what sort it is. If any man's work abide, which he hath built thereupon, he shall receive a reward. If any man's work shall be burned, he shall suffer loss. But he himself shall be saved, yet so as by fire. Know ye not that ye are the temple of God, and that the Spirit of God dwelleth in you? So 1 Corinthians 3:10 through 16 here is talking about using the right materials to build. Just like Exodus 26. This is the right material to build the temple. This is the right material to build the church. not wood, hay, and stubble. So teachers, take it seriously, okay? Build with gold, right? Build with enduring substance. Build with the proper materials. That's how the church is built. And then and the last thing for Exodus 26, that was built for God's glory, not for man's glory. So if you build with the right materials, that'll go to God's glory. Any questions or comments here? Okay, it's all about the material list, the purpose, right? One tabernacle, one tabernacle. This is how you build it, and this is with what you build it. Don't deviate. Don't create your own pattern. Okay, in the New Testament, the parallels are there too. Okay, build it in this way that it might endure. Okay, remember that God works in you to build it. Don't use the wisdom of men, but the wisdom of God. Yes?
When I teach, I don't think about building the church
Mm-hmm.
in a foundation. I think about each life and that they have a foundation that when they become adults and they make choices of their own, they have a foundation that's strong enough that I'm building on that foundation.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't think about as building a church. I think about each life
Right.
building a foundation for them.
Right. And you as a teacher, okay, so it's admonishing teachers to be careful how you teach. So you teach right. You teach this. Right. There's an individual application, okay, but every teacher is to build with truth, not with men's wisdom, right? So that this is the idea here, but you're right, individually, that's what you do. You give them the right material, the Word of God, and they take it and build on their lives the application of that truth to life. Okay. Any other questions, comments? Okay. Hi. Can I help you?
Yeah, I hope you can. Are you
I am the pastor. We're gonna close in prayer, but I'll talk to you in just a minute. Okay. We're about to close. So draw these big ideas again into your prayer time this evening. God's worship, God's glory done His way. That's what we need to do here in this church, in that building, okay? In building. Okay, now look at your prayer prompter. I want you to add 3 things here.